The air was tense with anticipation as the transport ship descended through the thick, turbulent atmosphere of the planet known as Aegis 7. A death world by every definition, Aegis 7 was a place where humanity's most resilient and resourceful soldiers were trained, tested, and forged into warriors capable of surviving the galaxy's most hostile environments. It was said that if you could endure Aegis 7, you could endure anything. On board the ship, Commander Xel'Var of the Thran Collective, a species known for their advanced intellect and strategic mastery, prepared for an experience unlike any he had ever encountered. Tall and imposing, his crystalline form shimmered under the dim lights of the cabin. His species prided themselves on logic, efficiency, and precision, traits that had made them some of the most formidable tacticians in the galaxy. Yet, they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. The invitation to visit Aegis 7's military academy, a request from Earth's Interstellar Council, was both an olive branch and a challenge. Humanity was eager to demonstrate its prowess, and Xel'Var was curious to observe the training methods of a species that had earned a reputation for unpredictability and survival against impossible odds. The transport landed amidst a sprawling base nestled within the jagged cliffs and steaming geysers of Aegis 7's volatile surface. Xel'Var disembarked, his luminous eyes scanning the harsh environment. The base was bustling with activity, soldiers in rugged exosuits drilling, repairing equipment, and preparing for live exercises. Colonel Adrienne Lang greeted him with a sharp salute. Her grizzled demeanor and scarred face spoke of a lifetime spent on the battlefield. "Welcome to Aegis 7, Commander," she said. "I hope you're ready to see how humans turn chaos into order." Xel'Var inclined his crystalline head. "I am eager to observe your methods. Though I must admit, your species' approach to warfare has always puzzled me. You lack the precision of the Thran, the discipline of the Korthuans, or the technological superiority of the Shorath. And yet you endure." Lang smirked. "Endurance isn't just a tactic, it's survival." The tour began with an overview of the Academy's curriculum, from hand-to-hand combat in high-gravity conditions to live-fire exercises in unpredictable terrain. Xel'Var observed the human cadets with growing curiosity. They were smaller and physically weaker compared to many galactic species. Yet their movements were calculated, their camaraderie palpable. It was during a live combat simulation that Xel'Var began to understand why humanity was so feared. The scenario involved a mock ambush in the Razor Fields, an area riddled with jagged rocks, poisonous flora, and unpredictable seismic activity. The cadets were split into two teams, defenders and attackers. The defenders set up a secure position, utilizing the terrain to their advantage, while the attackers moved in with unconventional tactics. Xel'Var watched as one of the attackers feigned an injury, luring the defenders into an exposed position. Another group of attackers set traps that funneled the defenders into a narrow canyon, where an ambush awaited. "This is chaos," Xel'Var muttered, his crystalline body pulsing faintly with agitation. Lang, standing beside him, chuckled. "It's improvisation. Humans aren't bound by tradition or rigid doctrine. When the rules don't work, we make new ones." Xel'Var nodded slowly, his sharp mind absorbing every detail. The cadets didn't just adapt to the environment. They exploited it in ways that no algorithm could predict. Even when outnumbered or outgunned, they relied on creativity, deception, and a seemingly innate ability to turn the tide. As the exercise concluded, the victorious team celebrated with laughter and camaraderie. Xel'Var noted how quickly the humans shifted from warriors to comrades, their bonds forged through shared hardship. Later that evening, Xel'Var joined Lang and a group of instructors for a debriefing. They discussed strategies, successes, and areas for improvement. Xel'Var couldn't help but voice a question that had been forming in his mind. "Your methods are effective, but they seem to rely heavily on unpredictability and emotional connections. How do you ensure consistency in such chaos? Lang leaned back in her chair, her gaze steady. We don't. That's the beauty of it. Predictability is a weakness, Commander. Enemies adapt to patterns, but humans? We're always evolving. And when we fight, we don't just fight for survival, we fight for each other. Xel'Var fell silent, contemplating her words. The Thran Collective had always prided itself on eliminating emotion from warfare, viewing it as a hindrance. Yet here, emotion was a weapon, as sharp and effective as any blade. Before he departed, Xel'Var requested to join one final exercise. Lang agreed, and he was paired with a squad of cadets tasked with retrieving a beacon from a treacherous canyon swarming with robotic drones. The cadets, undaunted by the challenge, quickly integrated Xel'Var into their plan. As the mission unfolded, Xel'Var found himself relying on instincts he didn't know he had. The cadets' trust in one another was contagious, and their ability to adapt under pressure was exhilarating. For the first time, the logical, crystalline Commander Xel'Var understood what made humanity so dangerous. When the beacon was secured, and the team returned to base, Xel'Var stood amidst the cheering cadets, his crystalline body glowing faintly. He turned to Lang, a newfound respect in his voice. Colonel, your species possesses a trait that no strategy or algorithm can replicate: the capacity to inspire. It is a strength that transcends logic. Lang smiled. Welcome to the Deathworld, Commander. As Xel'Var boarded his transport and ascended into the stars, he carried with him a profound understanding of humanity's resilience. The Thran Collective had much to learn, and perhaps much to fear. As the Thran transport ship departed Aegis 7's volatile atmosphere, Commander Xel'Var sat in quiet contemplation. His crystalline body pulsed faintly, reflecting the complex web of thoughts racing through his mind. He had come to the human military academy to observe and assess. What he left with was a sense of unease and admiration. The humans had not just survived the Deathworld. They had thrived in its chaos. Their adaptability, camaraderie, and willingness to embrace unpredictability were unlike anything Xel'Var had encountered in his long career as a tactician. But one particular incident during his visit lingered in his thoughts. The most dangerous training exercise of the Academy was a full-scale wargame set in the Wraithlands, a region notorious for its deadly sandstorms and predator-like drones that hunted anything that moved. Each year, the cadets were divided into teams, and their objective was simple: secure and hold a critical outpost against overwhelming odds. When Xel'Var expressed his desire to observe the exercise firsthand, Colonel Lang hesitated. The Wraithlands aren't just a simulation. The dangers are real. Even our most seasoned cadets have trouble out there. I insist, Xel'Var said firmly. If I am to truly understand your methods, I must see them in their rawest form. Lang finally agreed, though she assigned him to the cadets' command center, a fortified bunker equipped with monitoring equipment. From there, Xel'Var could watch the unfolding chaos without risking direct involvement. The war game began at dawn, the cadets' boots kicking up dust as they deployed into the Wraithlands. Xel'Var studied the monitors, his sharp mind analyzing troop movements and strategies. He noted how the cadets spread out, using the environment to their advantage rather than relying on rigid formations. But then the storm came. The Wraithlands' infamous sandstorms swept across the battlefield, reducing visibility to near zero and disrupting communications. The Predator drones, equipped with heat sensors, became even more lethal, their attacks relentless. From the command center, Xel'Var watched the cadets' carefully laid plans unravel. What will they do now? He asked, turning to Lang. Lang crossed her arms, her expression calm. They'll adapt. Sure enough, the cadets began to regroup in small, mobile units. Using the storm to mask their movements, they lured the drones into ambushes. Some teams built decoys using thermal emitters scavenged from their gear, drawing the drones away from their main force. Others set traps, using the shifting sands to bury explosives. One squad in particular caught Xel'Var's attention. They were led by a cadet named Ortega, a scrappy young soldier who seemed to thrive in the chaos. Ortega's team didn't just adapt to the storm, they used it as a weapon. By studying the drone's behavior, they identified weak points in their programming and exploited them, effectively neutralizing several squads of drones with minimal losses. Xel'Var was impressed but skeptical. These tactics are clever, but they lack precision. The randomness could lead to catastrophic failure. Lang smirked. Sometimes chaos is the best weapon. The enemy can't predict what doesn't follow a pattern. The exercise reached its climax when the cadets launched a coordinated assault on the outpost. Despite the storm, the Predator drones, and their limited resources, the humans succeeded in securing their objective. Ortega's squad was instrumental in the final push, using a combination of guerrilla tactics and sheer audacity to turn the tide. When the storm finally subsided, Xel'Var requested to meet Ortega and their squad. The cadets arrived at the command center, covered in sand and sweat but radiating a palpable sense of pride. "Cadet Ortega," Xel'Var said, his crystalline body reflecting the soft glow of the room. "Your performance was exceptional. What inspired your tactics?" Ortega grinned, rubbing the back of their neck. "Well, sir, on Aegis 7, the only thing that stays the same is that everything changes. You learn pretty quick that the environment isn't just an enemy. It's a resource. Use it and you've got the upper hand." Xel'Var nodded slowly, filing the words away in his mind. "Your species possesses a unique perspective on survival. It is unsettlingly effective." Lang chuckled. "Unsettling for some, maybe. For us, it's just how we live." As Xel'Var reflected on the Wraithlands exercise, he realized that humanity's strength went beyond their adaptability or their knack for improvisation. It was their refusal to be defeated by circumstances, their ability to find opportunity in chaos, and their unshakable bonds of trust that made them formidable. But what truly unsettled him was a deeper realization. Humanity's methods could not be fully predicted or countered. Where the Thran relied on logic and precision, the humans thrived in uncertainty, turning it into their greatest weapon. Xel'Var's transport ship broke through Aegis 7's atmosphere, the Deathworld shrinking into the vastness of space. He sent a message to the Thran High Council, summarizing his observations. His final line carried a weight that even he had not anticipated. "Do not underestimate humanity. They are not a threat to be conquered. They are a force to be reckoned with." The next chapter of Commander Xel'Var's visit to Aegis 7 was one he could never have anticipated. It wasn't just about the training methods or the exercises, it became personal. The night before Xel'Var was scheduled to leave the Deathworld, the base's emergency sirens blared through the facility. Startled, the commander rushed to the observation deck, where Colonel Lang and her team were already assessing the situation. "What's happening?" Xel'Var asked, his crystalline voice vibrating with urgency. Lang's face was grim. "Aegis 7 is unpredictable. Seismic activity in the fault line region has woken up something nasty. A swarm of indigenous creatures called shadow stalkers. Fast, lethal, and nearly impossible to detect. They usually stay in the deep crevices, but tonight, they're headed straight for the base." Xel'Var glanced at the screens showing grainy images of the approaching swarm, thousands of fast-moving blurs slicing through the rugged terrain like liquid shadows. Even from the poorly lit feeds, he could sense their ferocity. "Why not evacuate?" he asked. Lang shook her head. "There's no time. The base is our only defensible position. If we lose it, we lose everyone here." The soldiers were already mobilizing, fortifying the perimeter, deploying automated turrets, and preparing for a battle unlike any they'd faced in training. Xel'Var felt a pang of doubt. His people would never allow themselves to be cornered like this. They would retreat, regroup, and counterattack from a position of strength. But humans? They stood their ground. "Commander," Lang said, turning to him, "we could use another pair of eyes. Care to see how humans handle a real Deathworld threat?" Xel'Var nodded, his crystalline body glowing faintly. "Lead the way." The battle began before the base's defenses were fully operational. The Shadows Talkers came like a tide, their movements fluid and disorienting. They slipped through gaps in the defenses, striking with razor-sharp appendages and disappearing into the darkness before counterattacks could land. Automated turrets barely slowed them, and the air was filled with screams, gunfire, and the metallic screeching of the creatures. Xel'Var joined Lang at the command center, where she coordinated the defense with precision and calm. Yet, despite her efforts, the swarm seemed unstoppable. "They adapt too quickly," Xel'Var said, watching the creatures disable a row of turrets. "Your tactics aren't working." Lang didn't flinch. "That's because we haven't started yet." Before Xel'Var could question her, a group of cadets led by Ortega broke off from the main defensive line. They carried improvised flamethrowers and sonic disruptors scavenged from the base's equipment. Their goal was clear: draw the Shadows Talkers away from the weaker sections of the perimeter. "They're baiting them," Xel'Var realized aloud. "That's suicide." "It's a calculated risk," Lang corrected. "And they're not done yet." The cadets lured the creatures into a bottleneck, a narrow canyon on the base's eastern edge. Once there, they detonated charges that collapsed the canyon walls, trapping hundreds of Shadows Talkers. The creatures thrashed and screamed, their numbers thinning with each passing moment. But the swarm was relentless. As one wave fell, another surged forward, finding new gaps in the defenses. The base's energy reserves were dwindling, and the soldiers were running out of ammunition. Xel'Var turned to Lang. "You can't hold them off forever." Lang's eyes narrowed. "We don't need to. We just need to last long enough." "For what?" As if on cue, the base's comms crackled to life. "This is Alpha Squadron, approaching from the north with reinforcements. Hold tight." The sound of approaching dropships filled the air, their spotlights piercing the darkness. The cavalry had arrived. The soldiers rallied, using the reinforcements to push back the swarm. Flamethrowers, explosives, and heavy artillery turned the tide of the battle. Within an hour, the Shadows Talkers began to retreat, their numbers too diminished to press the attack. When the dust finally settled, the base was scarred but standing. The soldiers cheered, their camaraderie undiminished despite their losses. Xel'Var, standing amidst the exhausted but victorious humans, felt something unfamiliar, a flicker of awe. Later, as the base quieted and the dead were honored, Xel'Var joined Lang and Ortega in the command center. He studied the human faces, tired but triumphant, and spoke the question that had lingered in his mind all night. "You could have retreated. Any other species would have chosen to regroup and fight another day. Why didn't you?" Lang leaned against the console, her expression thoughtful. "Because that's not who we are. When we're backed into a corner, we don't run. We fight. Not just for survival, but for each other." Ortega chimed in, a faint grin on their face. "We don't win because we're the strongest or smartest. We win because we refuse to lose." Xel'Var nodded slowly, the crystalline glow of his body dimming as he absorbed their words. "You fight with purpose. It is humbling." Lang smiled faintly. "Welcome to Aegis 7, Commander. You've just seen what makes us human." As Xel'Var prepared to leave the next morning, He stood on the observation deck, looking out over the rugged landscape of Aegis 7. The scars of the battle were still visible, but so was the resilience of the humans rebuilding their defenses. He sent a final report to the Thran High Council, his words carefully chosen. The humans are not defined by strength, technology, or precision. They are defined by their tenacity, their creativity, and their ability to endure the unendurable. They are not simply survivors. They are defiers. To underestimate them would be a grave mistake. As his ship ascended into orbit, Xel'Var couldn't help but wonder. In the vastness of the galaxy, who truly held the advantage? The calculated tacticians or the chaotic warriors? For the first time in his career, he wasn't sure. Days after returning to his ship, Commander Xel'Var found himself replaying the events of Aegis 7 in his mind. The humans' tenacity, their unconventional strategies, and their refusal to back down haunted him in a way no other experience had. He was a creature of logic, shaped by centuries of Thran doctrine, but Aegis 7 had shown him something his calculations couldn't quantify: humanity's ability to thrive in chaos. The galaxy, however, didn't give him much time to reflect. 2 weeks after leaving Aegis 7, Xel'Var received an urgent message from the Thran High Council. A critical mining colony on the distant planet Erythra Prime had gone dark, its last transmission describing an unstoppable enemy that attacked without warning or pattern. Recon ships sent to investigate had disappeared, their signals cut off as soon as they entered the system. The Council ordered Xel'Var to lead a task force to secure the colony, assess the threat, and, if necessary, eliminate it. He was their finest tactician, a mind capable of dissecting any enemy strategy and countering it with precision. But Xel'Var hesitated. He thought of the Shadowstalkers on Aegis 7, their relentless unpredictability. He thought of Ortega's squad, who had turned chaos into opportunity. For the first time, Xel'Var doubted whether the Thran's rigid doctrines were enough. The humans had survived where others would have fallen because they embraced the unpredictable. And so, against every protocol and expectation, Xel'Var sent a request to Earth's Interstellar Council. He wanted a human detachment to accompany him to Erythra Prime. 2 weeks later, Xel'Var's fleet arrived in orbit around the desolate planet. The surface was shrouded in a crimson haze, the colony below silent and foreboding. Alongside his ships, a single human dropship descended to the surface, carrying Colonel Lang, Cadet Ortega, and a small team of Aegis 7 veterans. Xel'Var greeted them in the command bay, his crystalline body glowing faintly. "Your presence here is unconventional," he said, "but necessary. This threat defies logic. I require your perspective." Lang smirked. "Don't worry, Commander. We're good at dealing with illogical things." The human team and Thran forces descended together, touching down in the heart of the abandoned colony. The buildings were eerily intact, their metal facades unscarred by any sign of battle. But as the team moved through the streets, it became clear that something was wrong. There were no bodies, no signs of a struggle, only silence. "What happened here?" Ortega whispered, scanning the empty alleys with their weapon at the ready. Xel'Var's scanners picked up faint energy signatures, erratic, shifting, as though the very air was alive. "The enemy is here," he said, "but its tactics are irregular." Lang knelt near a faint trail of footprints in the red dust. "Irregular? That's one way to put it. Whatever this is, it's toying with us." As if on cue, the ground beneath them trembled. A low, guttural hum filled the air, reverberating through their bodies. Shapes began to emerge from the haze, shifting, amorphous creatures that seemed to blur the line between organic and mechanical. Their movements were erratic, impossible to predict, and they emitted bursts of energy that scrambled the Thran scanners. Shadow signatures, Xel'Var said, his voice sharp. They're masking their forms. My forces can't target them effectively. That's because you're fighting them like machines, Lang said, her voice calm despite the growing threat. We need to disrupt their rhythm. Ortega nodded, slinging a pack off their shoulder. Time for some human chaos. The humans moved quickly, planting makeshift charges around the colony's choke points. They used the debris to create noise and confusion, luring the creatures into traps. When the enemy adapted, the humans adapted faster, shifting their tactics on the fly. Xel'Var watched in awe as the humans turned the battlefield into a symphony of disorder. The Thran soldiers, though initially hesitant, began to follow the humans' lead, abandoning rigid formations in favor of fluid, reactive movements. The tide of the battle began to turn, but the enemy wasn't done. The largest of the creatures emerged from the haze, a towering mass of shifting metal and sinew. It moved with terrifying speed, its energy bursts ripping through the colony's defenses. Xel'Var stepped forward, his crystalline body glowing brightly. It's targeting our command structure. If we fall, the others will scatter. Lang smirked. Not if we take the fight to it. Together, Xel'Var and the humans devised a plan. Using themselves as bait, they drew the creature into the heart of the colony, where a massive thermal reactor lay dormant. Ortega climbed the structure, jury-rigging its controls to create a massive energy surge. As the creature lunged toward them, the reactor exploded in a blinding burst of heat and light. The shockwave tore through the colony, vaporizing the enemy. When the dust settled, the battlefield was silent once more. Back aboard the Thran flagship, Xel'Var and Lang reviewed the battle's aftermath. The Thran tactician's crystalline body dimmed slightly as he spoke. You humans are remarkable. Your methods defy reason, yet they succeed where logic falters. Lang chuckled. You're starting to sound like one of us, Commander. Xel'Var tilted his head. Perhaps I am. The galaxy is unpredictable. To survive, we must embrace the chaos. As the Thran fleet departed Erythra Prime, Xel'Var carried with him a newfound understanding. Humanity wasn't just an ally, they were a lesson. In a galaxy defined by order, they thrived because they understood that true strength came from the ability to adapt, to trust, and to face the unknown with defiance. And for the first time in his career, Xel'Var felt hope.